The council chamber fell silent when Yuna walked to the speaking platform. She wore the simple gray uniform that all human diplomats wore, nothing fancy or decorated. Her black hair was tied back neatly. She carried a single data tablet in her hands. The representatives from 47 different species watched her with curiosity. Some had tentacles, some had scales, some looked almost like Earth animals but weren't. They all waited to hear what the human ambassador had to say. YUNA looked at each section of the massive chamber. The Vrexians with their blue skin and 4 arms. The Crethians who floated in their gravity tanks. The Xanthari with their sharp teeth and warrior culture. She had worked with all of them for 15 years. She had eaten meals with them, laughed at their jokes, helped solve their problems. Now she had to say goodbye, and she couldn't tell them why. "I bring a message from Earth and all human colonies," Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her well could hear the sadness beneath it. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. All human personnel, stations, and vessels will leave Council space within 30 days. This decision is final. The chamber erupted. Everyone started talking at once. The translator devices struggled to keep up with 47 species, all demanding answers. The Vrexian Chancellor, Talmora, raised all 4 of her arms for silence. She was tall, almost 3 meters, and when she commanded attention, everyone listened. "Ambassador Yuna, please explain," Talmora said. Her large eyes showed genuine concern. "Has the Council offended humanity in some way? Have we failed you?" Yuna shook her head slowly. "No, you have been nothing but fair and kind to us. This is our choice, and ours alone. But why?" demanded the Xanthari war leader, his translator making his growl sound like thunder. "We have treaties. We have trade agreements. You cannot simply walk away." "We can, and we are," Yuna said simply. "All treaties are hereby dissolved by mutual consent. We release you from all obligations to humanity. We ask nothing in return." The Crethian scientist, Ixthara, pulsed with confusion in her tank. "Are you going to war? Have you found enemies we don't know about?" "No war," Yuna said. "No enemies. No threats to any of you. We are simply leaving. Where will you go?" Talmora asked softly. Yuna smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Away, far away. I cannot tell you more than that. I'm sorry." She placed her data tablet on the podium. "This contains all the formal documentation. Property transfers. Station access codes. Everything we're leaving behind is yours to use or dispose of as you wish. We have taken nothing that belongs to the Council." The questions continued for another hour, but Yuna had no more answers to give. She simply repeated the same things in different ways. Yes, humanity was leaving. No, they couldn't say why. No, it wasn't anyone's fault. Yes, the decision was final. When the session finally ended, Yuna walked back to the human embassy alone. Her assistant, Minho, was already packing boxes. He was young, only 23, and this was his first diplomatic posting. He looked up when she entered. "How did it go?" he asked. "About as well as we expected," Yuna said. She sat down heavily in her chair. "They're confused, hurt. They think we're abandoning them." "We are abandoning them," Minho said quietly. "We're saving them," Yuna corrected. "They just don't know it yet." Over the next few weeks, every human in Council space prepared to leave. On the trade station Hana's Rest, Merchant Captain Sungho coordinated the evacuation of 2,000 humans. They left the station fully functional, all systems running, all cargo organized neatly in the warehouses. The alien merchants who worked alongside them couldn't understand it. "Why are you leaving the cargo?" A Vrexian trader asked Sono. "This is worth millions." Consider it a gift, Sunho said. We won't need it where we're going. On the agricultural world humans called New Sol, Farmer Nari supervised the harvest one last time. The crops were ready. The storage facilities were full. The irrigation systems worked perfectly. She made sure every system was documented, every process written down in simple language that the Krethian settlers who would come next could understand. We built something good here, her husband Taeyeon said as they walked through the fields one last time. He was a physicist, not a farmer, but he had helped her plant these crops with his own hands. We did, Harry agreed. And now someone else will enjoy it. I wish we could tell them, Taeyeon said, about what's coming, about why we have to go. Nari took his hand. If we tell them, millions will die in the panic. Wars will start. Civilizations will tear themselves apart, fighting over resources. Our silence saves more lives than our words ever could. Back on Council Prime, Talmora visited the human embassy one last time. Minho was the only one left. He was doing a final check of all the systems, making sure everything was secure. You're really going, Talmora said. It wasn't a question. Tomorrow morning, Minho confirmed. I'm the last one. After me, no more humans in council space. Can you at least tell me if you're in danger? Talmora asked. If there's something we should know? Minho looked at her for a long moment. He wanted to tell her, wanted to warn her. But the orders were clear. We're not in danger, he said carefully. We're just leaving. Will we ever see humans again? Minho smiled. Maybe, someday, a long time from now. The next morning, Minho's small ship departed from Council Prime. Talmora watched it go from her office window. All across the galaxy, the last human ships were leaving. They didn't go toward Earth. They didn't go toward any known human colony. They just went out, toward the dark spaces between spiral arms, toward regions no one had explored. Within 60 days, every human was gone. They left behind stations humming with power. They left behind colonies with fresh food growing. They left behind warehouses full of goods and databases full of information. They left behind empty homes that were clean and maintained, as if their owners had just stepped out and would return any moment. But they didn't return. The galaxy felt emptier without them. Trade routes fell silent. Diplomatic channels went dark. The species who had worked with humans, who had called them friends, felt abandoned and confused. Some were angry. Some were hurt. All of them wanted answers. Talmora stood in the empty human embassy and looked at the walls. Humans had hung pictures there. Images of Earth's blue oceans. Images of human children laughing. Images of humans and aliens working together. All the pictures were gone now, but the hooks remained. What did you know? She whispered to the empty room. What did you see that we couldn't? The room had no answers. Only silence. Only the mystery of a species that had walked away without threats, without promises, without explanation. Just empty spaces where humanity used to be, and questions that no one could answer. 6 months passed like a slow wound that wouldn't heal. The Galactic Council kept meeting, kept making decisions, kept running the business of governing 47 species. But everyone felt the absence. The human chair at the council table sat empty. No one wanted to remove it, but no one could look at it without feeling confused and a little bit betrayed. Talmora couldn't let it go. She thought about Yuna's sad smile every day. She thought about Minho's careful words. She thought about how humans had always been helpful, always been kind, always been the ones who solved problems instead of creating them. Their departure made no sense, and things that made no sense bothered Talmora deeply. She proposed forming an investigation committee. The council agreed quickly. Everyone wanted answers. They chose Talmora to lead it, along with the Krethian scientist Ixthara and a team of specialists from a dozen different species. Their mission was simple: find out why humanity left. They started with the human embassy on Council Prime. The building was exactly as Minnow had left it. Power running, climate control working. Even the plants in the lobby were still alive, watered by automatic systems. Talmora walked through empty offices and felt like she was in a museum of a civilization that had vanished overnight. "Look at this," Ixthara called from the records room. Her translation device made her liquid language sound like bells. Their database is still active. They left everything. The team spent weeks reading through human files, meeting notes, trade agreements, scientific papers, personal messages. It was all mundane, ordinary, boring. Nothing that explained why an entire species would abandon everything they had built. "There has to be something," Talmora insisted. "People don't just leave. Not like this. Not without reason." They expanded the investigation to human colonies. The closest one was New Sol, the agricultural world where Nari and Tayan had grown crops for 15 years. A team flew out to examine it. What they found was stranger than an empty embassy. The farms were pristine. The crops had been harvested perfectly. The equipment was maintained and ready for the next planting season. But beneath the farms, scanners detected something unexpected. Large underground chambers. Construction that had never been reported to the council. Talmora's team excavated one of the chambers. It was huge, maybe 100 meters across. The walls were lined with some kind of ceramic material that their scanners couldn't identify. In the center was equipment that looked half-finished. Strange geometric patterns were carved into the floor. Mathematical formulas covered one wall, so complex that even Ixthara couldn't understand them all. "This is physics," Ixthara said, floating closer to the wall. "Advanced physics. Dimensional mathematics. But I don't recognize these equations. They're beyond our current understanding. Why would farmers need dimensional physics?" Talmora wondered. "They weren't just farmers," one of the technicians said. He had pulled up records on his datapad. The man who owned this farm was named Taeyeon Park. He was a theoretical physicist before he came here, one of humanity's best minds. He published 17 papers on quantum mechanics and dimensional theory. "A physicist pretending to be a farmer," Talmora said slowly. "Building secret facilities underground." What were they doing? They found similar chambers on 3 other human colonies. All different sizes, all unfinished, all covered in complex mathematics. It was like humanity had been building something in secret across dozens of worlds, then abandoned it all halfway through. While Talmora investigated the colonies, other problems emerged. The Xanthari Empire decided that empty human space was free space. They were a warrior culture, always looking to expand. Humanity had kept them in check through clever diplomacy, making sure the Xanthari had trade and honor without needing war. Now, with humans gone, the Xanthari saw opportunity. Their fleet approached Hannah's Rest, the trade station that Captain Sunho had evacuated. It was valuable real estate, sitting at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. The Xanthari battle commander sent a simple message: "This station now belongs to the Xanthari Empire." But when their ships tried to approach, something impossible happened. The station's defenses activated. Not weapons. No missiles or energy beams. Just a field of some kind that pushed the ships away. The Xanthari engines fired at full power, but their vessels couldn't get closer than 10 kilometers to the station. The battle commander was furious. He ordered his most powerful warship to blast through whatever barrier was protecting the station. The ship fired every weapon it had. The beams and missiles simply stopped when they hit the invisible field, energy dissipating into nothing. Then the station did something that made the entire Xanthari fleet retreat in fear. It moved, not the way stations normally move, with thrusters and careful calculations. It just shifted, instantly, 10,000 kilometers to the left. No acceleration, no energy signature. It was just suddenly somewhere else. The Xanthari fled. Their commander reported to the Galactic Council that the station was defended by technology they couldn't understand or overcome. Technology that shouldn't exist. Technology that humanity never told anyone about. They lied to us, the Xanthari representative said angrily at the emergency council meeting. They said they shared all their technology. They said they had no secrets. They never said that, Talmora corrected quietly. They shared much, but they never claimed to share everything. Ixtara was fascinated by the reports from Hana's Rest. Instantaneous displacement without acceleration. That violates every law of physics we know. Unless ... Unless what? Talmora asked. Unless they found a way to manipulate dimensional boundaries. To slide through space rather than travel through it. But that's theoretical. Impossible with our current understanding. Apparently not impossible, Talmora said. Just impossible for us. The investigation team returned to the human databases with new urgency. If humans had technology that advanced, there had to be records somewhere. They searched for anything related to dimensional physics, spatial manipulation, advanced propulsion. Most files were open and accessible, but some were locked behind encryption so strong that the Council's best code, breakers, couldn't crack it. Ixtara worked on the encryption for weeks. She was brilliant, one of the finest scientific minds in the galaxy. Slowly, painfully, she began to break through the outer layers of the security. What she found was a project designation, Threshold Protocol. The name appeared hundreds of times in locked files, cross-referenced with locations across human space, connected to names like Taeyen Park, Sanho Kong, Yuna Kim, Narration, all the humans who had been in positions of authority during the final years. All the humans who had supervised the evacuation. Ixtara managed to unlock a few fragments, partial files, incomplete data. But what was there made her stop moving in her tank, completely still with shock? Talmora, she said quietly. You need to see this. Talmora, read the fragments on the screen. Technical jargon she didn't fully understand, but some phrases were clear enough. Dimensional cascade wave, FTL collapse zones, propagation speed calculated at 0.003 light speed, and one phrase that made her blood run cold. Estimated impact on Council space, 18 months after detection. When did they detect it? Talmora asked. Ixtara checked the file dates. 2 years ago. Almost exactly. Talmora did the math in her head. 18 months after detection would be. She looked at Ixtara with wide eyes. 6 months from now. What does FTL collapse mean? One of the other investigators asked. Ixtara's translation device made her sound sad. It means faster than light travel will stop working. If there's a dimensional cascade wave, and if it's real, it would fundamentally alter the quantum structure of space. Our FTL drives depend on that structure. If it changes, we'd be stuck, Talmora finished. Every species on their own worlds. No way to reach each other. No way to travel between stars. It would break the galaxy, Ixtara said. Shatter it into millions of isolated islands. The investigation team sat in silence, looking at the fragments of information on their screens. Humanity had known. They had detected something catastrophic coming. They had 2 years to prepare, and they left without saying a single word. They could have told us, someone said angrily. We could have prepared together. But Talmora shook her head slowly, remembering Yuna's face, remembering the sadness in her eyes. If they told us, what would have happened? Panic, wars over resources. Every species fighting to save themselves. Billions would have died before the wave even arrived. So they left us to die ignorant? The investigator demanded. No, Tamora said softly. They left us something. Look at these underground chambers. Look at Hana's Rest. They were building something. They left us clues. She looked at Ixthara. We need to unlock more files. All of them. We need to know what humanity knew. And we need to know it now. Because if they were right, Ixthara said quietly, we have 6 months before everything changes. 6 months before the galaxy goes dark. Ixthara didn't sleep for 3 days. Her species didn't need sleep the way others did, but even she required rest. She ignored her body's signals and worked constantly on breaking the encryption. The other scientists on her team took turns helping, but she was the one who finally cracked it. The files opened like a door into humanity's last secret. Thousands of documents, research papers, calculation matrices, sensor data, all of it organized under one project name, Threshold Protocol. The lead researcher was Tyan Park, the physicist who had pretended to be a farmer on New Sol. Talmora read the first document with growing horror. It was written in simple language, like Taeyon knew someone would eventually read it and wanted them to understand clearly. 17 months ago, the document began, our deep space monitoring array detected an anomaly. We almost missed it. The signal was so faint, so far outside normal parameters, that our computers flagged it as an error. But Dr. Hana Zheng insisted we investigate further. She was right to insist. What we found will change everything. The document continued with technical explanations that even Ixthara struggled to follow. Something about dimensional boundaries breaking down. About the fundamental structure of space becoming unstable. About a wave of change spreading out from some catastrophic event billions of light years away. But the conclusion was written plainly. This cascade wave will reach a region of space in approximately 24 months from initial detection. When it passes through an area, the quantum tunneling effect that enables faster-than-light travel will collapse. The change appears to be permanent. Any species caught in the affected zone will lose all FTL capability. They will be isolated on whatever worlds they currently occupy, unable to reach their colonies, unable to maintain their stellar nations. Talmora felt dizzy reading it. She looked at Ixthara. Is this real? Could this actually happen? Ixthara had been reviewing the mathematical models. Her translation device made her sound tired. The calculations are sound. The physics are consistent with theories we've never proven, but always suspected were possible. If their sensor data is accurate, then yes. This is real. They found more documents. Tayan's personal log. Entries written late at night when he couldn't sleep, when the weight of what he knew pressed down on him like a physical thing. We told the human government 3 days ago. Emergency session. Everyone present. I watched their faces as they understood what I was telling them. We have 2 years. 2 years before the galaxy breaks apart. 2 years to save whoever we can save. The next entry was dated a week later. The debate is over. We cannot tell the Galactic Council. I argued for it. I said we had an obligation to warn them. But the others showed me the projections. If we announce this, panic will spread faster than the wave itself. Wars will start immediately. Every species will fight over resources needed to build conventional ships. Billions will die in the chaos. Maybe more than the wave itself would kill. Another entry, a month later. The decision is made. Operation Exodus begins today. Admiral Sun Ho Kong will lead the construction effort. We're building generation ships. Old-fashioned, slower-than-light vessels, powered by conventional fusion drives. We can't save everyone. Maybe 200 million humans if we work perfectly. It kills me that we have to choose. It kills me more that we can't save anyone else. Talmora found herself crying as she read. She didn't cry often. Her species considered it a private thing. But she couldn't help it. These humans had known the galaxy was ending and chose silence to prevent chaos. The investigation team found more pieces of the puzzle. Plans for the underground chambers on New Sol and other colonies. They weren't defensive structures. They were construction facilities. Hidden factories where humans built the components for their generation ships in secret, away from satellites and sensors that might detect them. Hana's Rest, the station with impossible defenses, had been the assembly point. Sun Ho Kang's logs described it. We built 15,000 ships here. Small ones, large ones, everything in between. Each one capable of sustaining human life for thousands of years if necessary. Each one powered by fusion reactors that will outlast anyone alive today. We assembled them in the station's interior, then launched them through dimensional gates to prevent detection. The defense system we left behind is automated. If anyone tries to take the station, it will protect itself. A final gift, I suppose. A place that will remain free even after we're gone. More personal logs from other humans painted the full picture. Yuna Kim, the ambassador, had known for over a year before she delivered her final speech to the council. Her private writings revealed her pain. I eat lunch with Talmora every week. She's become a friend. She tells me about her family, her worries, her hopes. I smile and nod and pretend everything is normal. Meanwhile, I know her entire civilization is about to be shattered. I know I could warn her, but I also know what would happen if I did. So I smile and eat and feel like a monster. Narration, the farmer on New Sol, wrote about harvesting her last crop. Taeyeon and I planted these fields with hope. We thought we'd grow old here. Now we're leaving it all behind for people we'll never meet. People who might curse our names for abandoning them. I hope someday they understand. I hope someday they forgive us. There were calculations about who to save. Debates about how to choose which humans would go and which would stay. They chose volunteers. People who understood they were leaving Earth and all the colony worlds behind forever. People who accepted they might never see another alien species again. Young people who could have children. Scientists who could preserve knowledge. Artists who could preserve culture, but they also chose randomly. Lottery systems to ensure every human had a chance. Rich or poor, important or ordinary, everyone's name went into the selection pool. Ixtara found records showing that several high-ranking human officials had not been chosen. They stayed behind, faces unknown, names lost to history. The wave was coming. Taeyeon's calculations put it at roughly 6 months away from council space, just as Ixtara had estimated. But buried in the files was something else. Something that made Talmora's hands shake as she read. It was titled Project Legacy and signed by Yuna Kim. The document was short. We cannot save them. But we cannot leave them with nothing. Begin encoding the blueprints. Attached were hundreds of files. Complete schematics for generation ship construction. Detailed instructions for building fusion reactors. Methods for creating closed-loop ecosystems that could sustain life indefinitely. Techniques for compressing data storage to preserve knowledge in minimal space. Everything a species would need to survive in a post-FTL galaxy, but the files were encrypted. Not with the same heavy encryption as the Threshold Protocol. This was different, lighter, almost like a puzzle rather than a lock. Ixtara recognized it immediately. They wanted someone to find this, she said. The encryption is just strong enough that you'd have to be looking, but not so strong that a determined searcher couldn't break it. They hid it, but they hid it in a way that could be found. Talmora felt something break inside her chest. Not pain exactly. Something bigger than pain. These humans had spent 2 years preparing to save themselves, while also preparing to save everyone else. They built their own escape, while leaving behind the tools for others to escape too. They could have just left. Could have disappeared and let the galaxy burn. Instead, they left blueprints, instructions. Hope dot at the bottom of Project Legacy was a final message from Yuna. It was a video file. Talmora opened it with shaking hands. Yuna appeared on screen. She looked older than Talmora remembered. Tired. There were gray streaks in her black hair. She sat in a plain room somewhere, probably on one of the generation ships. Behind her, Talmora could see other humans moving around, living their lives in exile. "Hello," Yuna said softly. "If you're watching this, you found what we left for you. I'm sorry we couldn't give it to you directly. I'm sorry we had to hide everything. But I'm not sorry we left." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We detected something coming. A wave that will change the rules of physics in this region of space. FTL travel will become impossible. We had 2 years of warning. We could have told you. We wanted to tell you. But we ran the simulations. We asked our best minds what would happen if we announced it. Every simulation ended the same way. War, panic, billions dead in the chaos. So we made the hardest choice we've ever made. We stayed silent." Yuna looked directly at the camera, directly at whoever would eventually watch this. "We built ships for ourselves. Generation ships powered by conventional drives. We chose who could come and who had to stay. We left our home worlds, our cities, everything we built. But we couldn't leave you with nothing. So we left you this. Complete instructions for building your own ships. Everything you need to survive. If you're watching this, you still have time. Not much time, but enough. If you start building now. If you work together." She smiled then, the same sad smile Talmora remembered from their last lunch together. "You taught us so much. The Vrexians taught us about honor in leadership. The Krethians taught us patience in research. The Zenthari taught us strength in adversity. Every species we met taught us something valuable. We learned cooperation from you. We learned that working together makes everyone stronger. Now we hope you'll remember that lesson. Work together. Build the ships. Save as many as you can. And maybe, someday, somewhere in the dark between galaxies, we'll meet again." The video ended. Talmora sat staring at the blank screen, tears running down her face. Around her, the other investigators were crying too. Even species that didn't normally show emotion were overwhelmed by what they'd learned. Humanity hadn't abandoned them. Humanity had saved them in the only way that wouldn't destroy them. They left quietly so the galaxy could survive. They left blueprints so others could escape. They walked away not because they didn't care, but because they cared too much to watch everyone panic and die. Ixthara broke the silence. "We need to tell the council. Now we have 6 months. Maybe less." Talmora stood up slowly. She felt older suddenly, like the weight of what she knew had aged her. "We tell them everything. And then we start building. Just like the humans did. Will it work?" Someone asked. "Can we really build enough ships in 6 months?" Talmora thought about Yuna's smile. About Minho carefully maintaining the embassy until the last moment. About Taeyan farming while secretly building an escape for his entire species. About humanity's quiet dignity as they walked away. "The humans believed we could," she said. "They left us everything we need. Now we have to prove they were right to believe in us." The announcement went out across the galaxy the next day. Every species heard the same message at the same time. The Galactic Council didn't hide anything. They released all the files, all the evidence, all of humanity's research. They showed Yuna's video message to everyone. They explained what was coming and how much time remained. The galaxy didn't panic the way humanity had feared. Perhaps because they had the warning with enough time to act. Perhaps because humanity's careful preparation had shown them a path forward. But there were problems. Big problems. Some species refused to believe it. The Draxians called it a conspiracy. They said humanity had invented the dimensional wave story to justify their own desertion. They demanded proof beyond sensor data and mathematical models. They wasted 3 weeks arguing before their own scientists confirmed the calculations were correct. Other species simply gave up. The Calvaxi were a small civilization, only 3 colony worlds. Their leadership looked at the blueprints for generation ships and saw only impossible complexity. They didn't have the industrial capacity to build even one ship before the wave arrived. They thanked the Council for the warning and said they would face their fate with dignity. But most species tried. They looked at humanity's gift and understood what it meant. They began to organize. And surprisingly, they began to cooperate in ways they never had before. The Xanthari were the first to offer help. Their war leader stood before the Council with his sharp teeth bared in what his species considered a smile of respect. Humanity kept us from war for 20 years through clever words and fair dealing. They could have let us destroy ourselves. Instead, they saved us from our own worst instincts. Now it's our turn. The Xanthari Empire has the greatest industrial capacity in the galaxy. We will build ships, not just for ourselves, for anyone who needs them. Talmora almost fell over in shock. The Xanthari, offering to help others before securing their own survival. It was unprecedented. The Krethian scientist Ixthara presented her analysis to the Council. According to humanity's blueprints, we can build a generation ship in approximately 3 months with proper resources and coordination. We have 6 months before the wave arrives. If every major industrial species contributes, we can build enough ships to save approximately 30% of the galactic population. 30%. It meant 70% would be left behind, would be stranded on their worlds when FTL travel died. The number hung in the air like a weight. 30% is better than 0, Talmora said firmly. We start immediately. Every species contributes what they can. Industrial capacity. Raw materials, scientists, workers. We call it the Unity Fleet, and we build it together. The construction began within days. The Xanthari opened their massive shipyards to all species. The Vrexians contributed their expertise in life support systems. The Krethians shared their knowledge of energy management. Species that had barely spoken to each other before worked side by side, following the instructions humanity had left behind. Talmora coordinated the effort from Council Prime. She slept 3 hours a night and spent every other moment organizing, planning, solving problems. The scale of the project was enormous. They needed to build 15,000 ships. Each ship needed to carry supplies for thousands of years. Each ship needed to be self-sufficient, a complete ecosystem traveling through the void. But there were other discoveries. As species explored the abandoned human facilities more thoroughly, they found more gifts. On New Sol, in the underground chambers where Taeyeon had worked, there were medical research files. Cures for diseases that the Council's doctors had been struggling with for decades. Humanity had discovered these treatments, but never shared them. Why not? A Vrexian doctor demanded when she saw the files. These could have saved millions. They had the cure for Corvellis syndrome, and never told anyone? Ixthara had found the accompanying notes. They ran studies. They determined that if they released the cure too soon, some species would become dependent on human medicine. They wanted to make sure each species could produce the treatments themselves. They were waiting for the right moment to share. Then the wave was detected, and they never got the chance. On other worlds, they found energy solutions. New types of fusion reactors that were more efficient than anything the Council used. Terraforming techniques that could make marginal worlds habitable in half the time. Agriculture methods that could double crop yields without depleting soil. It was all hidden. Not locked away or encrypted. Just quietly stored in databases, waiting to be found. Each discovery came with documentation written in clear, simple language. Humanity wanted others to find this knowledge. They just wanted them to find it when they were ready, not before. They were protecting us from ourselves, Talmora said to Ixthara one night as they reviewed another set of files. They had all this knowledge and held it back because they thought we weren't ready for it. They were probably right, Ixthara admitted. If they had given us everything at once, we would have become dependent on them. We would have stopped innovating on our own. They were teaching us to walk before giving us the ability to run. The construction of the Unity fleet continued. The first-generation ship rolled out of the Centauri shipyards exactly 91 days after construction began. They named it the Minho, after the young human who had been the last to leave Council Prime. The name felt appropriate somehow. A small gesture from a forgotten person, remembered in the largest construction project the galaxy had ever seen. But not everyone could be saved. The lottery systems were brutal. Each species had to choose. The Kelvaxi, who couldn't build their own ships, were given spaces on vessels built by others. But there weren't enough spaces for all of them. 2/3 of their population would be left behind. Talmora met with the Kelvaxi leader, an elderly female named Therix. They sat in a quiet room far from the chaos of the construction yards. "How do you choose?" Talmora asked softly. "How do you decide who lives and who doesn't?" Therix's species didn't cry, but her voice carried deep sadness. "We do what the humans did. Random lottery for most. Critical personnel chosen by need. Young families prioritized because they can build new generations. But also, we ask for volunteers to stay. You'd be surprised how many elderly people raise their hands. They say they've lived full lives. They want the young ones to have a chance." "I'm sorry," Talmora said. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Therix said. "Humanity gave us more time than we would have had. They gave us hope. Because of them, 30% of my people will survive. Without them, it would be 0. I cannot be angry about that." As the deadline approached, more ships were completed. The Unity fleet grew from 1 ship to 12 to 100 to 1,000. They were beautiful in their own way. Not sleek or elegant like the FTL vessels that would soon be useless. These were solid, practical, built to last forever. They looked like traveling cities, which is exactly what they were. 3 months before the wave was due to arrive, the Draxians finally finished their calculations. They had been skeptical, had refused to participate in the Unity fleet. Now their scientists stood before the Council with fear in their eyes. "We were wrong," their representative said simply. "The wave is real, but we have no ships. We wasted too much time arguing. Can you help us?" The HFY War leader stood immediately. "We have materials for 30 more ships. We intended them for our own people. But Draxians helped us negotiate peace treaties 50 years ago. We don't forget our debts. We'll build ships for you." One by one, other species offered help. The Vrexians contributed life support systems. The Crethians sent their best engineers. Even the small species with limited resources sent what they could: food, medicine, workers willing to help construct ships for people they'd never met. Talmora watched it happen and thought about Yuna's message. "You taught us cooperation." Humanity had learned from the galaxy. Now the galaxy was learning from humanity's example. Learning that sometimes you help others, not because you gain something, but because it's right that the Draxians got their ships. Not as many as they wanted. Not enough to save everyone, but enough to save some. And they were grateful in a way they had never been before. Ixthara came to Talmora's office one evening, 3 weeks before the wave was due to arrive. The Unity fleet was nearly complete. 14,917 generation ships. Not quite the 15,000 in humanity's original plan, but close enough. Close enough to save roughly 31% of the galactic population. We did it, Ixthara said. Her translation device made her sound amazed. We actually built them all. We had a good blueprint to follow, Talmora said. And a good reason to work together. What will you do? Ixthara asked. You have a place on the flagship. You earned it. Talmora looked out her window at Council Prime. This city had been the center of galactic civilization for 1,000 years. In 3 weeks, it would be cut off from everything. The people who stayed behind would be isolated. They would build what life they could with what they had. Some worlds would thrive. Others would struggle. All of them would be alone. I'm going, Talmora decided. I'm going because I want to see what we build next. I want to see if we remember the lessons humanity taught us. And maybe, someday, I want to see if Una was right. If somewhere out in the dark, humans are still traveling, still hoping, still believing that walking away was the right choice. She turned back to Ixthara. What about you? I'm going too, the scientist said. Someone needs to preserve the knowledge. Someone needs to remember what humanity left us. And someone needs to make sure we don't forget that they saved us by leaving us. 3 weeks later, the Unity fleet departed. 14,917 ships, carrying billions of souls. They left behind worlds still full of people. Left behind cities and civilizations. Left behind everything they couldn't carry as the flagship Unity Prime pulled away from Council Prime. Talmora stood at an observation window and watched her home world shrink in the distance. She thought about Una, watching Earth disappear in the same way. Both of them leaving everything behind. Both of them hoping it was for something better. Behind the fleet, invisible and inevitable, the dimensional cascade wave approached. In 72 hours, it would wash over council space. FTL travel would end. The galaxy would go dark. But ahead of the wave, the Unity fleet sailed on, carrying hope and humanity's final gift into the unknown. 200 years passed in the dark between stars. The Unity fleet traveled at a fraction of light speed, moving through space that had never known the touch of faster-than-light engines. Behind them, the galaxy they once knew was scattered into thousands of isolated pieces. Ahead of them lay a cluster of habitable worlds that humanity's long-range surveys had identified before they left. Aboard the flagship Unity Prime, Commander Jisoo Talmora stood in the observation deck and watched the stars. She was the granddaughter of the original Talmora, the Vrexian who had discovered humanity's gift. The stories of those days had been passed down through her family like precious heirlooms. Stories of a species that walked away to save everyone. Jisoo had never seen the old galaxy. She was born on this ship, 17 years into the journey. Now she was 43 years old and commanded a vessel carrying 140,000 souls from 6 different species. Her crew was mixed. Vrexians, Krethians, Zenthari, Kalvaxi, and others worked side by side. They had grown up together on these ships. To them, the old divisions meant nothing. Commander, the communications officer, called out. Her name was Isiel, and she was Krethian. We're receiving something strange on the old human frequencies. Jisoo turned quickly. Human frequencies? Are you certain? Positive, Isiel confirmed. It's very faint. coming from somewhere beyond our planned destination. But it's definitely the old Earth Standard Protocol. Jisoo felt her heart's beat faster. Her grandmother had told her about the humans, about Yuna's sad smile, about the message that promised, maybe, someday, they would meet again. But 200 years had passed. Humanity's generation ships would have traveled far in that time. The chances of encountering them were impossibly small. "Can you clean up the signal?" Jisoo asked. Isiel worked for several hours. The rest of the command crew gathered around, watching. Everyone knew the stories about humanity. They were like legends now. The species that sacrificed everything to save others. The species that left behind blueprints and hope. Finally, Isiel managed to isolate the signal. It's a recording. Very old. Set to broadcast on repeat. I'm playing it now. The screen flickered. An image appeared. An old human woman with white hair and kind eyes. She looked tired but peaceful. Jisoo recognized her from historical records. Yuna Kim, the last human ambassador to the Galactic Council. "Hello," Yuna said softly. The recording was grainy, clearly made centuries ago. "If you're receiving this, you made it. You survived. You built the ships, and you had the courage to leave everything behind. I'm so proud of you. We all are." Yuna smiled, and it was the same sad smile from the video message 200 years before. "I don't know when you'll find this. Maybe 50 years after we left. Maybe 500. Time is strange out here in the dark. But I wanted to leave you something. A message. A promise. And maybe an invitation." She leaned forward slightly, as if trying to reach through the centuries. "When we left Council space, we didn't just run away. We had a plan. A destination. We found a nebula about 15,000 light years from Earth. Our scientists called it the Crossing because it sits between two spiral arms. We've been traveling there for 200 years. By the time you receive this message, we should have arrived. We're building a new home there. New worlds. New cities. New hopes." Yuna paused, choosing her words carefully. "We know you built ships too. We know you survived. We left you everything you needed to escape, and we knew you were smart enough to use it. We've been watching the skies, hoping to see signs of your fleet, hoping to know that our sacrifice wasn't in vain." The old woman's eyes grew wet. "You don't owe us anything. We left because it was right. We saved you because we wanted to, not because we expected reward. But if you want, if you have room in your hearts, we would love to see you again. We would love to share what we've built. We would love to learn what you've become in these long years apart." Yuna provided coordinates. A location deep in a nebula called the Crossing. "It's far," she admitted. "Maybe 3,000 years of travel at conventional speeds from where we estimate you might be. We understand if you can't come. We understand if you choose to build your own civilization far from ours. But the invitation is there. No pressure. No obligation. Just hope that someday, in the deep dark between stars, we might meet again." The message ended with Yuna looking directly at the camera. "To whoever sees this, from whatever species, whatever world, you survived. You worked together. You proved that cooperation is stronger than fear. We always believed in you. Now we hope you believe in yourselves. Safe travels, friends. And maybe we'll see you at the Crossing." The screen went dark. The bridge of Unity Prime was completely silent. Jisoo felt tears running down her face. Around her, her crew was crying too. Even the Zenthari tactical officer, who came from a species that considered crying shameful, had moisture in his eyes. "Commander," Isiel said quietly, "what do we do?" Jisoo thought about her grandmother, about the original Talmora who had discovered humanity's gift and spent her life making sure people remembered. About Yuna Kim, who carried the weight of saving the galaxy without ever receiving thanks. About 200 years of traveling through darkness, wondering if they would ever see humans again. "Get me a channel to the entire fleet," Jisoo said. "All ships? I want everyone to hear this." When the channel opened, Jisoo spoke carefully. "This is Commander Taomora of Unity Prime. 2 hours ago, we detected a message from humanity. They survived. They built a home in a place called the Crossing. They invited us to join them. The journey would take approximately 3,000 years." She paused, letting the number sink in. 3,000 years. No one alive today would see the destination. Their children's children's children wouldn't see it. It would take more than 100 generations to reach the crossing. "I'm not ordering anyone," Jisoo continued. "This is a choice each ship must make for themselves. We were traveling to the worlds humanity identified for us. Those worlds are still there. We can still build our own civilization. But we also have this invitation. A chance to reunite with the species that saved us. A chance to say thank you. A chance to build something together." She looked at her mixed crew. Phyrexians and Krethians and Zenthari and Kalvoxi, all working together. "My grandmother told me that humanity taught the galaxy how to cooperate. They learned from all of us. And then they showed us what we could be at our best. Now they're asking if we want to continue that lesson. If we want to see what we can build together." Jisoo took a deep breath. "Unity Prime is going to the crossing. Anyone who wants to join us is welcome. Anyone who wants to settle the nearby worlds is equally welcome. We split here, but we split as friends. What do you say?" The response took time. 14,000 ships needed to vote. Captains consulted their crews. Crews debated among themselves. It took 3 full days before all the responses came in. 12,416 ships voted to go to the crossing. The rest chose to settle the nearby worlds. There were no hard feelings. The fleet split peacefully, each group wishing the other well. They would build different civilizations, but they would remember they came from the same place. The ships bound for settlement veered toward their chosen worlds. The ships bound for the crossing adjusted their course toward the coordinates Yuna had provided. As Unity Prime led the way, Jisoo stood in the observation deck and thought about the journey ahead. 3,000 years. More than 100 generations. She would never see the crossing. Her children wouldn't see it. Her grandchildren's grandchildren wouldn't see it. But someday, someone would arrive. Someone would step off these ships and meet the descendants of Yuna Kim and Minho Choi, and all the humans who had walked away to save the galaxy. "What do you think they'll be like?" Eziel asked, standing beside her. "The humans, I mean. After 3,000 years. Different," Jisoo said. "We'll be different too. Neither of us will remember the old galaxy. We'll just have stories passed down. But maybe that's enough. Maybe the stories are what matter." She thought about her grandmother's words, passed down through 5 generations. About Yuna's sad smile and Minho's careful maintenance and humanity's quiet dignity. About a species that gave up everything to save others. "My grandmother told me something before she died," Jisoo said. "She said humanity taught her that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Not because you're scared, not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you're willing to let others save themselves. She said that lesson changed her life. Did you believe her?" Isiel asked. Jisoo smiled. "I'm leading 12,000 ships on a 3,000-year journey to meet people we've never seen. I think that answers your question." The fleet sailed on through the dark. Behind them, the settled ships began their new lives on new worlds. Ahead, somewhere impossibly far away, humanity waited at the crossing. Between them stretched 3,000 years of travel. 3,000 years of living, growing, changing. 3,000 years of carrying forward the lesson that cooperation was stronger than fear. Jisoo made a log entry that night. She knew it would be read by her children, her grandchildren, everyone who came after her. She wanted them to understand why they were taking this long journey. "We go to the crossing, not because we owe humanity anything," she recorded. "We go because they showed us what we could be. They walked away to save us. Now we walk toward them to show them it worked. To show them that their sacrifice mattered. To show them that 200 years later, after everything they did, we still remember. We still care. We still want to build something together." She looked out at the stars, at the vast distance between her and humanity's new home. "My grandmother spent her life making sure we remembered the humans. Now I spend my life making sure we reach them. And someday, maybe in 3,000 years, someone standing where I stand will look out and see the crossing. They'll meet the descendants of Yuna Kim, and they'll say what we should have said 200 years ago. Thank you. Thank you for caring enough to walk away. Thank you for trusting us to survive. Thank you for leaving us the blueprints and the hope and the belief that we could save ourselves." Jisoo paused the recording and added one final thought. Humanity left without threats or promises, just silence and hope. Now we travel toward them with the same spirit. No expectations, no demands, just gratitude and the belief that somewhere in the dark, family is waiting. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. The recording ended. Unity Prime and 12,000 ships sailed on through the endless night, carrying forward a message that would take 3,000 years to deliver. A message that began with humanity's departure and would end with their reunion. A message that said simply, "You were right to believe in us. We were worth saving." And we never forgot. The galaxy was dark now. Phi-El travel was dead. Civilizations were scattered across impossible distances. But in that darkness, the Unity fleet carried light. Not the light of stars or engines, but the light of hope. The light of species working together. The light of a lesson learned from a species brave enough to walk away. And 3,000 years ahead, at a place called the Crossing, humanity waited, building, growing, hoping that someday someone would receive their invitation, hoping that someday, in the deep dark between stars, friends would come home. The journey was long. The destination was impossibly far. But Jisoo smiled as she watched the stars. Because humanity taught them one final lesson. Sometimes the longest journey is worth taking. Not for what you'll find at the end, but for what you become along the way.